Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the last day of the conference. Glad to see we've actually got quite a decent turnout this morning after last night. Really must thank you all again for all your support for UCISA, for the charities. I'm not sure how much we raised last night, but I know it was quite a significant amount. And I'd also like to express our thanks to everybody that donated prizes for the raffle. Another really great event last night, so thank you very much for that. We had the AGM yesterday, and we did say we would announce the outcome from the ballot for the elected trustees. So I'm pleased to announce that Liz Bailey and Claire Priestley have been voted in as the elected trustees. We did try and make it as obvious as possible yesterday that the 4 other nominees we would really appreciate, and we do look forward to their involvement. And we held a Board of Trustees meeting this morning. Thanks, David Telford, for scheduling that for 8:30 in the morning for your last act. It was really appreciated. But the 4 other nominees, so Garrod, Arthur, Paul and Darren, if you're still willing, and I understand you are still willing to act as trustees, the Board of Trustees have requested to co-opt you onto the Board of Trustees committee. So we'll have a really good, strong Board of Trustees going forward for the coming year. So I appreciate everybody's support on that. I'll move straight into today's session, and I'd like to introduce James, Kathy, Lynn and Louisa, who are doing the session this morning entitled Shaping the Future Workforce. If you have managed to attend even half of the sessions over the conference, you'll see the theme that's coming through, which is all about people in the organisations, people in the sector, and what we need to look forward to in the future, and the sort of challenges that we're leading into with that. The human factors, mustn't talk about soft skills, must talk about anything but soft skills, but what are the sort of skills that we need for this workforce of the future. So I'm looking forward to this session this morning. I think it will generate quite a bit of discussion. So I shall now hand over to Louisa, who will run the session this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Drew. Good morning, everyone. My name is Louisa Dale. I'm Director of Insight at JISC. Suppose all information stored on computers everywhere were linked. Suppose I could program my computer to create a space in which everything could be linked to everything. It's not my words. It's Tim Berners-Lee, of course, and his proposal, famously and imaginatively titled Information Management, a Proposal. He put all of his energy and his creativity not in the title, of course not, but in the proposal of the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web hits 30, and let's hope it's not a midlife crisis. It's fascinating to consider, actually at this point, how we may be maturing in our understanding and relationship with technology. For me, it brings to mind Shakespeare's 7 Ages of Man. Shakespeare wasn't that down with the kids, clearly, and it was a 7 Ages of Man, but he talks about the soldier, jealous of honour, sudden and quick quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, progressing to the justice, full of wise saws and modern instances. And I am giving you Shakespeare before 10 o'clock in the morning. I make no apology for that. If you've made the effort to attend, I would like your attention to these words. My focus here is I find comfort in imagining that we might actually be maturing in our relationship with technology. Come back to the soldier, jealous in honour, sudden and quick quarrel. It strikes me that perhaps Shakespeare saw social media ahead of its time, and very much so that actually we might be maturing on to the justice, not perfect, but have the wisdom and maturity in our assessment of technology. What is its purpose for? It isn't the toy and the plaything. It actually is something very fundamentally transformative for us. I draw upon a few thinkers before we get to the piece of my colleagues. Thomas Malone recently gave a wonderful lecture, illuminating lecture at Nesta on superminds. I heartily recommend as a read or just a look up on YouTube. He talks about the relationship between people and computers, that our future lies in a rich relationship alongside computers as partners. Malone leads the Centre of Collective Intelligence at MIT. He's conducted some fascinating experiments on collective intelligence, exploring what delivers and drives up collective intelligence. He's repeatedly found that adding women into the group increases the collective intelligence of the group, much to his chagrin, I must say, and he's to the point where he's now trying to understand this more often. But it's given him a diversity and us a diversity challenge that I don't think we appreciated previously. But that's not really the point. Malone's the reason I reference Malone is actually he guards against us focusing too much on technicalities. Now, I appreciate you might say it's all very well for him. He's not delivering an IT function in a university, but actually he thinks far more challenging for ourselves in the future state is an appreciation and an exploration of how we make decisions, of collaborative working, of group working. He feels at MIT that and therein lies the most pressing challenge for ourselves. Closer to home, at JISC's DigiFest conference very recently, Dave Copland, very long at Microsoft, talked and gave a really entertaining talk for those of you that experienced it. I'm sure you'll agree. He talks very simple thesis that work is changing and education needs to change. The future is not, in his view, that everyone codes, but rather a deep thought about how we engage with technology, its purpose, our higher purpose and expectations, and really seek to foster the skills and resilience to adapt. Even if we're skeptics about entering into the fourth industrial revolution, and we might well be so, there's surely value in considering what workforce do we need? What kind of education do citizens need in a fast-changing world? Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a colleague, consultant for JISC, Lynn, also my colleagues, Kathy McCabe, Director of Information Services at Heriot-Watt, and James Smith, Director of Information Technology at Birkbeck University. JISC and UCISA have explored some discussions in and around the future of the workforce, and Lynn's going to talk to you a bit about that. Kathy, James and I spent some time together as EDUCAUSE and JISC looking at the workforce of the future. We sought to understand and explore a little bit about what it took to support a really simple user experience that belies the sheer complexity that lies beneath. The days of universities and colleges providing individual IT solutions that stand alone and managed independently are gone. We understand that basic literacy is a requirement for staff anywhere in the university. It's a given for citizens generally. But somehow, how do we cope with the fact that all staff on campus are somehow effectively working within the IT organisation? So as a group, we appreciate there's enough challenge in the day-to-day, and I very much appreciate that there's enough challenge in the day-to-day on campus, and it's a big ask to step aside and look ahead. But we as a group explored how the shape of the IT function is important to be attracting, preparing and retaining a very high caliber staff with a broad range of skills to adapt and accommodate this future. So, I'm just going to click on from this part. And actually, it's interesting, my slides don't reflect the talk I'm giving to you. You know, very much a focus in Education 4.0 and work that JISC is exploring at the moment looks to a very different future of teaching transformed, of a personalised learning experience. But we as a group, and a report that we'll share shortly, will be published early in April, explores really a conversation that we convened as JISC and EDUCAUSE, 5 CIOs in the US, 5 in the UK, and really sought to understand, okay, how do we bridge this, the challenge of today, the very real challenge of today that meant it difficult sometimes for colleagues to contribute to our working sessions, with this aspiration for the future. And really we came to a grounded part and understanding in that. It's our hope, not that we've answered the questions, that we help start a conversation, that we provoke some thinking today. And Cathy, we'll hear much more from Cathy and James shortly. But that we share with you our thinking, and together we might promote further conversation. It is a really challenging time to be leading a technical function, a technology function, never mind within a university and all the challenges and opportunities that provides. But we hope that together we can shape a very different future, carrying the wisdom that we've gained over these first, ideally, heady days of the World Wide Web into the future. But now I'm going to hand over to Lynn and hear a little bit more about the work that JISC and UCISA have prepared.
Good morning. I shan't be quoting Shakespeare, I'm afraid, and neither will I be talking about the rugby, which I may have done a little last night at dinner. I'm just going to take you briefly, I'll keep it relatively brief, around some of the work that JISC and UCISA have done collaboratively recently, where they surveyed leadership within HE in the UK on the subject of improving the student experience and optimising service delivery. But what I've sort of pulled out maybe are some of the key points or the key themes around the discussion that we have today. And we start off with that, and I'm not allowed to say soft skills, but I think those human skills, those critical business skills that were mentioned quite a lot yesterday by Natasha and others. Quoting here, work is more about a business partnership, an advisory and consultancy role rather than just technical roles. There's this really strong theme now of more than just technical roles. And also that we need to communicate, we need to collaborate more with the wider institution and talk about the value that IT and the whole digital landscape can bring. And when we look at the slide here, really, where organisational culture has been identified as the biggest barrier towards successful digital delivery, I don't think you have to be a rocket science to understand where they expect these human or soft skills are going to be used. There was also of note, and again this is picking up on themes from the previous days, a real desire and an aspiration to foster digital thinking throughout the wider organisation. So again, another area where more communication, more collaboration skills are being sought. And continuing on the theme really of beyond the technical roles, supplier management and contract management have been things identified within this report, but also, I've heard commented many times, and when it comes to new skills, it's very important we have the ability to manage suppliers more effectively. So that's come through quite strongly in areas as well. And it's echoed here again, we are having to develop procurement, legal and contract management skills, as now we're much more involved with cloud procurement, developing strong commercial business case skills and managing costs, again, particularly around cloud. And on that subject of cloud, universities, higher education, certainly are quite big adopters of cloud storage when compared with the public sector. It's been quite prominent. Cloud's very much at the forefront of thinking. Skill sets is now all about cloud integration and APIs. Of course, cybersecurity and data feature as well. And John Beaver here suggests that you have to unpick all those bespoke integrations between such things as records management systems, student records, finance, and look to replace them with modern APIs. Retraining, reskilling, and recruiting to make sure we've got those skill sets are something that we have to do. When asked about specialist skills, user experience, business analysis, data science, artificial intelligence are all relatively, they're not new, but they're certainly at the forefront of thinking for many now where they might not have been in the past. Security, I think, has been around forever. And finally, again, picking up on themes that have been discussed previously, in the previous days, some are finding it difficult to recruit and retain staff, particularly, or at least there's a feeling particularly in the larger cities like London. But I would say, again, picking up on some of the things we discussed previously, there are things that a university can offer beyond just salary. And I think that's another important piece that we need to understand and develop a bit more, maybe collaboratively. So that's it, really, just some of the highlights, hopefully, from that piece of work.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. It's interesting that the two studies came to recruitment and attractiveness so much. But for first, I just wanted to ask Kathy, you participated in the EDUCAUSE GIST project. Can you share a little of your reflections of participating in this project?
Yeah, thank you, Louisa. I really valued the opportunity to have a couple of hours once a month to really stop what I was doing and think and have conversations with other CIOs, and not just CIOs here in the UK, but also in the US. And I really valued the opportunity to understand and explore where we have common problems, but also where we have differences as well.
James?
Yeah, no, I was struck by the similarities between some of our institutions, but also struck by some of the huge differences. I mean, I'm always conscious that I work for an institution that's a massive outlier anywhere. But the difference in scale between my institution, where I have about 60, 65 staff, in the IT organisation, and one of the participants, Tina Papas from Rutgers University, was describing an IT organisation with over 1,000 staff, and the difficulties in effecting change in an organisation on that scale are vastly different. So I was grateful I didn't have 1,000 staff at that point.
No, indeed. Well, it's actually one of the reasons why that JISC and EDUCAUSE have worked together in a number of projects of this ilk, similar model, exchanging ideas and opportunities between CIOs in the UK and US. Because actually we find the differences are stark, but where there's commonality, there is an opportunity to explore the solutions and really trade and exchange experience and expertise. But to our focus today, James, can you help us understand how universities can prepare for the future workforce? It's the $64 million question, I get that.
It is the $64 billion question, and I don't think we've got one answer for it, but I sort of start with the thought that I brought into this discussion from the very beginning, which is that we're talking about preparing for the future IT workforce, but my opinion is that the entire workforce is the IT workforce. And that's our biggest challenge, that everybody in the organisation is in some way involved in the use of or the delivery of the IT. There is certainly, thinking about my own institution, there is nobody who isn't involved in the IT. Even the cleaning staff are involved in using systems that tell them how to set out the rooms for different classes. Everybody's using it. And our challenge is that we have to accept that, and we have to upskill everybody to ensure that we're able to deliver systems that best meet the entire organisation's needs, as opposed to just focusing on the development of the staff in one part of the organisation.
Yeah. Kathy, have you thoughts on this regard?
Yeah, I think there are two key aspects I think that we have to think about as CIOs. I think, first of all, we actually have to keep up with the technology. If we want to be attracting young and talented people, or not young, just talented people into the sector to work and help deliver our tech services, we need to know that we're offering up-to-date technology. Otherwise, I think we'll not attract anyone. And I think we also have to, recognise that we need to foster a culture of change and willingness to change, and recognise that change is not going to go away, it's just going to accelerate, and we need to find ways of making sure that all of our staff, our IT staff and everyone is willing to embrace that level of change. And I think that's the culture that we have to foster.
Yeah, not easily done. Both of you have expressed real challenges of not just leading an IT function, but also attracting talent into that space. So can you share a little about some of your understanding or the perspectives we heard from the group about how universities can attract and retain talent in the IT organisation? James?
Yeah, I mean, one of the really great things about being involved in this discussion is you do get to hear opinions from other people. And Kirk Kelly from Portland in the States was describing how they have taken the approach in their organisation to seek out external validation for their organisation as a good place to work. They are deliberately applying for awards for the 100 greatest IT organisations to work for, and being ranked along Microsoft and Google as organisations where it is a good place to work. And they've said, and I believe him, he's bigger than me.
It's bigger than everyone.
He's bigger than everyone. He made me look like a midget. He was describing how that has had a demonstrable impact on their ability to attract staff, because people see, there's a buzz about the place, and I think that's something that we can definitely all think about.
Yeah, and he was really clear, wasn't he, Kirk? He had very tangible and specific goals that helped him on the way. This was no slow change that he articulated and achieved within the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about recruitment practices? How can universities improve their recruitment practices, and recognising it's not simply the IT leader that plays an active role here? Cathy, have you thoughts to share on this?
I think I was struck yesterday by some of the comments that Natasha made about how people don't really understand what tech roles are. And it's just not clear, and we focus on job descriptions that are very hard technical skills, and that attracts certain kinds of candidate. And actually, I think what we need to do is to be much clearer about the purpose behind the roles. And I think there's a role for us as CIOs to think really hard about how do we make those attractive offers? How do we make sure that people on the outside of universities come in and see all of the vast range of activities that go on within our technical services? So I think we've got some work to do to start to not standardise, but at least to, I think, give a compelling description of what it's like and how actually working in university is about changing lives, and actually you're part of that particular role. And I think as well we should make a whole lot more, but as Lynn said just at the end of his talk, universities have a whole lot more to offer than just salary. And in fact, sometimes salary is perhaps not what we might want to be able to offer. We may want to be able to offer more, we may be constrained, but there are so many other things that people are looking for, that they value within the workplace. So flexible working, or the variety of things that they may get to do. And I think there's a whole lot of other attributes that universities can offer to attract and keep talent.
Yeah, wonderful. James?
I mean, I was actually interviewing a couple of weeks ago, and I was just listening to you, thinking about the approach that we take, certainly, to recruit staff at our institution. For the first time in a long time, I was interviewing with people outside of my IT organisation, and I think they were slightly surprised by the degree to which we were talking about the institution. When candidates say, "Is this a good place to work?"
Yeah.
And I think people outside IT were surprised that as IT staff, actually the thing that we talked about first, the thing that I always talk about first, is the institution and the mission of the institution, because ultimately that's why we're there. And I think it's really important. I mean, personally, I think it's really important that people want to work for an organisation because they believe in the values and the ethos of the organisation. I'm contractually obliged to talk about my organisation whenever I'm on a stage. So I work for an organisation that is very proud of the fact that it has a singularly unique mission. It was founded above a pub on the 11th of November 1823 to provide an educational opportunity for London's working population. And we talk about that. There is, if you talk to anybody in our organisation, they understand why the institution's different. They understand that there is a very strong mission that has carried the organisation through 200 years almost. Touch wood, we'll get there. And that's why we come to work. because we want to provide educational opportunities to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to engage in higher education because they'd missed out or because they'd taken other choices earlier in their lives. And we spend an awful long time talking about that and not so much talking about the technology, because ultimately I want people to work for me, with me, who really care about the place. Technical skills we can worry about later. I want people who really want to engage in the delivery of the services that support the teaching and the research in our institution. So I think, it sounds trite and it's often repeated, but we are, or certainly I am, and I talk to other people, certainly everybody we talked in the group, we are recruiting for the human skills. We're not recruiting for the technical skills.
Yeah.
Technical skills we can teach. None of us were born with the technical skills. Some of us arguably still haven't got them, but it's the human skills that we're looking for. Just nicking something else from Kirk Kelly in the States, and he'll never know I've nicked it, so I'll just repeat it anyway.
I'll tell him.
Oh, you tell him,
Okay.
fine.
It's all right.
It was a good idea. Kirk, we had a long conversation when we met in person, and the technology for meeting online is brilliant, but meeting in person was much better. About how we can improve the diversity of our workforce, and he had one I thought very useful practical suggestion, which I intend to implement myself. And he was citing research that I can't remember, but it sounded believable, that men are in general much happier making stuff up in an interview situation.
Yeah.
And in general, women tend to be a bit more honest in interview situations. And the suggestion being, therefore, that, I mean, we all know interviews are an appalling way to hire staff, but nobody's come up with a better way yet, or not one that scales, or not one that we've all adopted anyway. And Kirk's suggestion was that for all of the roles that he recruits to in their IT organisation in Portland, they give the candidates in advance the questions they're going to be asked, because it allows people to think about how they will answer it. It allows everybody to not be confronted and have to make stuff up on the spot. And it takes out the variable that the people who are better with the gift of the gab, who just make stuff up on the spot, appear better in interview. And his point is that we're not hiring press secretaries. We're not hiring somebody who's got to cover for a politician who's going to get doorstepped. Our staff, thankfully, aren't in that situation. They have all sorts of other problems, but they haven't got that problem. Mm. And that sounded like one really tangible thing that everybody could do, and you could do very quickly. So I share that with you.
Thank you for that. Actually, Kathy, I wondered, we were talking earlier this morning, and you were saying, and you're quoted in the report as saying, you've only ever recruited for the human skills, and you find yourself, I think, hurry up, what took you all so long? I don't know if you've got views on that to draw upon from that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think what Lisa's referring to is that I've been around the sector for quite a long time, and when I started, I mean, some 29 years in higher education, and I've always hired for attitude rather than the skills, because, as James said, you teach the skills, you learn the skills, the technical skills, but you can't learn some of the other stuff. And I'm just quite astonished that it's obviously what we're all talking about now, but for me it's always been the case.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Just a final question before we open up to the floor. How do you feel that universities can improve retention and grow staff careers? James?
Well, again, reflecting on my most recent hire, involved the most, not that I hope I've ever been dishonest with potential candidates, but I had a series of very honest conversations with the person that I wanted to hire in my most recent experience, because I was conscious that this role, amongst all sorts of roles, is likely to be quite challenging, and I think, if we are to retain staff, we're not offering, as we said at the start, we're not offering vast riches working in higher education. We can offer all sorts of other intangible benefits. We can offer the satisfaction of doing something for the public good, but we can also offer a challenge. And one thing that I think is a common trait amongst certainly the staff that I work with in my organisation is they love a challenge. They like the intellectual challenge. In my most recent hiring experience, I spent a long time explaining to the candidate just why this role was particularly challenging and being really honest, to the point that, again, I think some of the people that I was interviewing with were giving me sort of sideways glances when I was saying, I'm not trying to put you off, but I want you to understand what you are going to have to deal with when you join us. I want you to join us, but I want you to understand how the land lies.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to, well, I'm hoping, touch wood, that will lead to a more positive experience for this person, because they're coming into it with their eyes open.
Yeah.
They're coming into it accepting and being excited by the challenge to deliver something, to change something, to make something better.
Yeah.
And I think that can only help.
It's important, and it establishes trust really early. I have a similar experience, and certainly there's a real power because you're very early on offering an in and a trusted kind of relationship, which can be really, really quite powerful quite quickly. Kathy, what's your take here on growing careers?
Yeah, I think there are some real challenges for us. I don't have answers. I just have questions that I could pose to people. If you think about the new generation of workers who come in and who want that more mobile career, portfolio career, they may want to come and stay for a little time, do something very exciting and move on. So what does career look like for them, and what can you do for them while they're with you? But also that's alongside the people, the lifers, the ones who come and they stay and they don't go. And how do you actually manage to keep those careers and keep people motivated as well? So I don't have the answers. I just think it's a really interesting conundrum that we're all going to have to balance in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you for that. So thank you, James and Kathy, so much. You know, you've grounded really the high aspiration of earlier and a brilliant future, but hopefully have shared something on how to navigate that. I'm interested in views from the floor and questions also. I think one last Kirk Kelly moment. Kirk might be watching online, you never know.
Yeah.
He might be.
Hi, Kirk.
Quite early in the morning.
He talked very much about being intentional. You know, he sought to make a difference and is making a difference within his university. And as James alluded to, lots of people talk about the importance of working with purpose, but actually something new to me at least, and I feel the group was the intentionality and being grounded in today's challenges, but never losing sight of where you want to get to. It's always going to sound a bit trite, but that intentionality was really making a difference to him and colleagues on the Portland campus, and impressive because of that. So
we'll open it up to the floor. Just a quick one from me. I can sympathise with you, Kathy, why is it taking us so long to get here? I haven't been in the sector as that long. It feels like a lifetime, but only 7 years. I come from the commercial, the private sector. I question, how much do you think we can and how much do you think we should learn from other sectors in the approach we have to building the workforce and recruiting?
I think we should lead it. I think we should look and see what other people are doing, but I think there's a real opportunity for higher education to be the leaders in this and show the way.
I think
I've got a lot to offer. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to take it on. Just briefly, what I will say is that the huge opportunity that higher education has, and the education research sector more generally, is it doesn't have to work very hard to find that higher purpose. It's there already. It is about changing lives and transformative power of education and research. That's an opportunity. Private sectors have worked very hard to identify those higher purposes and work it, and then they have a lot within the depth of operations and the support to supply to achieving that purpose. But we don't really have to stretch that far, and that's a real opportunity. I don't know, James.
Oh yeah, no. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, it's we don't have to rely solely on financial gain to motivate people, and I'm not thinking for a moment that people's only motivation for work in the commercial sector is financial gain. I think people in general like to do a good job. I mean, I generally believe that of people, but. It is not hard, as you say, to motivate people when they can see the transformative power of the thing that they're contributing to do. I almost turn the question around to you, Drew, actually, is what do you think higher education, because I'm speaking as somebody who's basically worked their entire career in higher education.
Yes.
So I guess I'm curious as to what you see the distinct differences are.
I do see some of the points that both yourself and Cathy have made, and your point there about what is the value of the interview. It's particularly the way, and I'm probably speaking out of turn on my experience at my institution, it is a very badly run process, and we formulaically do it, and we don't end up with the right candidates quite a lot of the time. I think the experience that Cathy, that you brought into this, it's the sort of thing we should be doing, and it's refreshing to hear that actually you've developed that with independently of any sort of influence from external sectors. But there's a lot of really good practice, particularly in recruitment out there, of different approaches of bringing people in. And this thing about, are you recruiting an individual or are you recruiting to a team, or actually are you trying to recruit a team? It's ending up in a situation where you recruit to a team, you end up with a bunch of clones.
Yeah.
You don't want a bunch of clones. You actually want that diversity, the point earlier on of collective intelligence, bringing some diversity into a group. That's what we need to try and work out the best way of doing. And there are different techniques of doing that.
Well, if you think about how you procure software or services, if you were to buy software or services that cost £500,000, you would be going through quite an in-depth requirements gathering and tender evaluation exercise. If you hire a member of staff on a reasonably average grade in UK higher education with on-cost, if they stay for 10 years, it's going to cost you £500,000. And do we put the same effort into that sort of selection exercise that we put in the... and arguably they can do a lot more damage if you recruit the wrong person. So I absolutely agree. I mean, I think a simple panel interview on its own is rubbish.
Yes.
I always insist on at least some other sort of presentation or some test or some scenario exercise or something as a means to triangulate, because...
Okay, sorry, I monopolised it a bit. Any questions from the floor? Oh, Heidi, we've got a microphone. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask James, his piece of research there about men making things up more in interviews. Okay.
It wasn't my research.
No. But I just wondered whether that was a positive or a negative, because it could actually go either way. You could say that this individual, I don't know whether you want to say all men make things up, but you could say that this person's able to think on their feet.
Well, and
they can bullshit better.
I'm glad you said bullshit first, because that's what I've been training myself all morning not to say. But I mean, the point that was made to me about this is that we don't need people who, in general, are able to make stuff up on the spot. That's not skill number one for most of our staff. I mean, it might be high up the skill list for people like us who end up in committee meetings doing in some verbal sword fight with a senior academic who just won't let something lie. We probably need to be able to think quickly on our feet. But most of our staff, actually, we don't want them making knee-jerk I'm just going to start reconfiguring our mail system. I'm just going to make this stuff up as I go along.
Yeah.
That's not what I want. I don't know about you, but we want people we need people to be able to give considered opinion and considered thought to how they address issues.
I've just got a wee follow-up. It's a great question, Heidi. What we found really early on in this piece of work was that since we did a first look at the CIO in 2014-15 as JISC and EDUCAUSE, where we explored attributes of the technology leader in higher education, we found already in 2018, as it was, that it was an expectation from the participants in the group that they were recruiting those skills and attributes within their workforce. So what was positioned as the noble leader in 2015 was already expected to be something that wasn't just at the CIO level, was several layers beneath. And that's really interesting. That's a big shift in a short space of time. To James's point, reflects the challenge of working in this space, but also reflects the need for diverse experiences and expertise within your functions. Any other questions?
Over here.
It's not a question, but I'd just like to share two pieces of my experience over the years. One was 19 years ago now. I've been in this sector for 3 years. I was back in working for a global corporate, and they decided to build a branch in the UK, and from the US they decided to recruit across EMEA, because the US saw EMEA as just one continent like the US, through a mass recruiting exercise for 300 people to fill a data center. It was done remotely, rather an amusing sort of exercise, but it was all based on the interview, and people went in there and they performed as they performed in interviews. And as one of the technical managers leading a team after that, in a group of 5 teams that were together, we found that when we came to the appraisals afterwards, that we had a lot of people that got through, were absolutely fantastic at interview, very low technical skill sets, and they were on the highest pay packet. Consequently, we had a lot of absolutely brilliant people who were rubbish at interview, and they were on the lowest end of the pay scale. And we spent 3 years going through an exercise to give the people that had done well at interview, that didn't have the skills, the difficult message, and conversely on the other end, to try and reverse that disparity that was there. Another one later for me was, as a technical manager recruiting technical staff, I had 2 tests that I actually gave people. One was, what do you know? And the other one was, what would you do? And in the series of questions I had for what do you know, there was always an answer at the bottom. There were 5 answers of various, obviously the silly one and the 2 that have got to work out and the real one. But the 5th answer was always, I don't know. And the way I scored that test was, if you got it wrong, you got -1. If you said I don't know, you got 0. So it was penalising people for making things up, for guessing, because in a technical scenario, we can't have people guessing. I've seen the downside of that many times. And on the test that actually said, what would you do? Obviously scenario-based questions, things like that. There was always one at the bottom that said, I would contact my line manager, escalate it. And again, it was a similar sort of scoring system. So what I was looking for was not only the skills and the knowledge, but the honesty, because that was what was important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just conscious of time, I think the next session's due at 10 o'clock. Yep. One last one from John.
Picking up on what's just been said there, I came from the private sector. In the private sector, we had 2 different pay scales, one for technical skills and one for management skills. And there was a comment that Natasha made yesterday, which seemed to indicate the only way you can increase your earnability is to move across from technology into management and go up the management side. I find that is going to cripple us in terms of getting the right people in with the right skills, because the best technologists don't necessarily make the best managers.
Yeah.
You've got the wrong skills.
Yeah. Actually, just a wee comment, if I may. GISC ourselves, we're learning about this at the moment. Steve Masters, our CTO, has come in and is developing technical career pathways for precisely that reason, for colleagues who may not actually want to take, and we may not get the best out of them if we force them to progress through a management approach.
Many private sector companies did this 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is one of the things that is a challenge in our sector, that we as organisations, we are constantly hand-wringing about doing things fairly and following due process, and not being, I mean, what are our if I'm being rude about our human resources departments, there are not getting sued departments. That's what they're there for. And unfortunately, I mean, that's great, and we should be equitable and we should be fair, but sometimes the constraints that puts on us and the ability, I mean, I've had one recently where I have argued the toss and succeeded in the end to be able to say somebody, this role should be being paid the same as these people manage 10, 15 people, and I want this person to be paid the same because of their technical skills. He doesn't manage anybody, but his technical skills are crucial to our organisation. He's leading our technical design, and we should be rewarding him for that, which, you know, Hay evaluation, HERE evaluation doesn't really understand.
Okay, so I think we need to bring it to a close there. Could I just ask you to thank the panel? It's been a great session this morning. Really appreciated the input and the honesty, so thank you.